Okay, we want to go ahead and talk a little bit about how the United States economy was changing in the early half of the 1800s prior to the Civil War. There were a lot of advances going on that really led to a rapid change in our country. We were industrializing. In other words, we were developing the ability to use machines to produce things. In other words, we were making factories. That's really what a factory is. It's a mechanical production technique that enables you to go ahead and do the same thing over and over and mass produce items that before had to be handmade and were labor intensive. As a result of this, our labor force really changes because now we can manufacture things. We need factory workers. Probably one of the earliest examples of this would have been the textile industry, places like Lowell Mill in New England, where again, um, you could take workers from any background and plug them into the production line, into the production facility, and make it work. Uh, One of the groups that we really started to use early on were women. Women worked in the mills. You could pay them a relatively low wage, and you could go ahead and produce a lot. This will eventually lead to unionization, where workers start to band together. They start to have strikes. You develop national trades unions, like for carpentry and weaving and printing and things like that, in response to these mass labor facilities, these factories, where you have lots of workers working together. This also brings a demand for cheap labor. As these factories grow, they need lots of people to work in them, and the immigration patterns to the United States begin to change. A lot more immigrants begin coming from Europe, places like England and Ireland and Germany and Scandinavia. And a lot of the folks coming from places, especially like Ireland, were primarily Catholic, and they were poor and they worked cheap. And so they really went ahead and they were something very different coming, and really changed the shape and the face of our nation. You also get the birth of something that we call capitalism. Capitalism is actually a term developed by Karl Marx, the founder of communism. But the idea being that the means of production is really controlled by private individuals. It's really a free market, and it's really developed by Adam Smith, although Adam Smith didn't call it capitalism. But the idea was that private individuals own the land, private individuals own the factories, private individuals own the machines. These were not things that were the domain of government. And the people who owned these things were often called entrepreneurs. They were businessmen. The word entrepreneur literally is somebody who undertakes a risk, somebody who puts their money out there, and if the business is successful, they make a lot more. If the business fails, well, they're going to lose the money. And that's something that was kind of unique to the United States. We had a lot of entrepreneurs, and it was something that we prized. We wanted lots of people to do that. And that led to a lot of innovation. People like Samuel Morse, who develops the telegraph and eventually Morse code, dot, 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 SOS, that was developed for communication purposes via the telegraph. Transportation revolutions during this time period, during the early to mid 1800s. Robert Fulton and his steam engine, originally something that was used in boats and steamboats, but eventually moves to railroads and enables us to traverse the country. And what was before just unheard of times and weeks, we went from taking months to travel across the country to taking weeks to travel across the country because of the steam engine and the railroad. Some of the manufacturing changes that took place included the development of the sewing machine by guys like Elias Howe and I.M. Singer. This decreased the cost of clothing by 75%, whereas something that might cost you, $100 before, now with the sewing machine, might cost you only $25. So people could afford to buy a lot more stuff because goods were getting cheaper. The development of rubber, a process called vulcanization, developed by guys like Charles Goodyear, that treats rubber using heat, heating it up. Vulcanization, Vulcan, the god of fire, um, from Roman mythology. And what that does is it makes the rubber more durable. And because the rubber is now more durable, it can be used for things like shoes and boots, at least at first. But of course, eventually the huge application is car tires, eventually because of the developments of guys like Charles Goodyear and Firestone and things like that. Also, significant developments in agriculture, in particular here in Illinois. John Deere and Cyrus McCormick. John Deere develops the steel plow out of Moline, Illinois. And Cyrus McCormick, also from Illinois, develops the mechanical reaper. It could replace and do the work of 5 workers. And so all of a sudden, you didn't need as many people to work farms anymore. 1 or 2 guys could do it, and you could produce just as much, if not more, than before. And this revolutionizes, again, not only agriculture, but also manufacturing, because now, again, you free up more people to go to work in the cities, to go to work in the factories.